Jen and her husband Dan were at the supermarket when their baby was being especially fussy. He took her for a 10-minute drive to calm her down and came back into the parking lot waiting for Jen to finish shopping for groceries. Dan was taking a business call and sat down absentmindedly rocking the baby when a woman approached them. It's not uncommon for people to ask to play with their baby. She's got big rosy cheeks, soft wisps of gold hair, and the most adorable gurgly toothless grin. But her nap schedule was paramount, so he was preparing to tell the woman she actually couldn't play with the baby right then. She walked over, brimming with confidence, and before Dan could even finish his sentence, she picked up the carrier and started walking off. Dan was in shock and said, "Excuse me, put her down." She started walking away more briskly. Dan tried to grapple the carrier out of her hands, resulting to restraining her arms. This woman yells, "Help! He's trying to take my baby! Kidnapping! 911! Help!" kicking him in the shin and pulling a pink bottle of pepper spray out of her handbag. Unsurprisingly, no one in the parking lot was clocking the earlier interaction and assumed he was really a kidnapper. Immediately, a man knocked Dan to the ground and was holding him down, telling him that the police was being called. He was telling everyone in the parking lot it's his daughter, but no one was listening. "I have pictures of the baby on my phone." This, however, didn't translate well, because everyone interpreted it as him having stalking photos of the baby. It was at this point that another man kicked Dan as hard as he could in the ribs. At this time, Jen came out of the store and she thought he was being robbed by these people. She was yelling for security, panicking, and when she saw that her baby was being held by a woman, she was relieved. Jen thought maybe her daughter was moved out of harm's way whilst her husband was being robbed. She couldn't find a security guard outside the store, and so she ran up to the people holding her husband down, waving her wallet, pleading, "Take everything you want, just leave us alone." The man said, "Lady, we need to wait for the police to deal with him." Jen was confused as to why muggers have called the police. "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" And made out someone saying, "He tried to abduct that woman's kid. Her husband would never hurt a child." She kept trying to understand what the man was saying, and suddenly, it all clicked. She looked around for the woman who had her baby, and she was halfway across the parking lot. Jen went ballistic and sprinted across right to her. All she could think to do was to grab the woman by her hair and squeeze her throat with her other arm. She yanked her hair as hard as she could, and that was enough to make her drop the carrier. She was so scared and surprised she threw herself on top, and when she looked up, the woman left. Not one person tried to stop her, and within the next couple minutes, police had arrived. There were still several bystanders who explained it as her husband trying to kidnap the baby. The police's first questions when asking for her description weren't investigative. They were questions thinly veiled, trying to convince Jen not to pursue charges, still placing blame on her husband. Do your husband and the baby look dissimilar? Is there a chance she thought he was abducting the baby and she was trying to intervene? Could your husband have been doing something inappropriate or violent to the baby that would make her feel compelled to extricate the baby from the situation? Did she seem groggy or confused? Could she have mistaken either of them for her own family members? They spent more time verifying that the baby was actually Jen's instead of focusing on the kidnapper. Her husband had called his brother at that point, who works in an office with a lot of lawyers, and connected with one ASAP. And they gave him the priceless advice to get every officer's name and badge number, to request copies of the store's security tapes right away, and to escalate the complaint higher up the chain if these officers weren't taking them seriously. Finally, Jen and Dan had enough reason to believe they were being taken seriously, and they went home. Dan was seething with rage and grappling with a feeling of helplessness from how little he was able to do, and has 2 cracked ribs from when the man kicked him. There were still people who stuck around to talk to the police, who were giving the husband dirty looks, and one man even implored the police to involve CPS to verify that it was really their baby. So to the parking lot kidnapper and the parking lot skeptics, they better hope that Jen and Dan never sees them again.